Did you enjoy tax season? Of course you did, everyone does. That's why we spend so much time on it. But even if you didn't have fun doing your taxes, at least you know they're going to pay for vital services, right? Right? Before I attempt to answer that, please consider supporting this channel not by buying from my merch store this time, but by raiding the merch stores of my rivals. Have you ever heard government spokespeople say the country just can't afford something? We've looked under every cushion. We just can't find the money, so we can't have nice things. The logic is you can't spend more than you take in, at least not without borrowing. But is that how money works? If you're a household, yes. If you're a corporation, sure. But if you're a government that issues its own sovereign currency, you can pay for whatever you want. For the longest time, I thought the way taxes worked was governments took in money, then spent about that much or a bit more, and they would have to borrow to finance the deficit. But when I learned about modern monetary theory, a different picture emerged. Most national or federal governments issue their own currencies, which means they print money, figuratively, for whatever they want. When the government spends, it creates that money and puts it into the economy. The government decides how much it's going to spend, hands out money, then takes in taxes to curb the effects of inflation that come with putting more money into circulation. When you see a government cutting spending, it's not because they can't fund those things, it's because they don't want to. The government budget is dispersed by typing numbers into the accounts the government is funding. So let's say I'm a corporation and I sell $1 million worth of stuff to the US government. How does it pay me? The Treasury orders a Federal Reserve Bank to change the numbers in my bank account. Where did that money come from? From the computer. The computer created it. The government created it. It didn't make some giant state bank account go down by $1 million. That money's not being taken from anywhere. It's being created or printed. As an aside, to people who want to abolish the Federal Reserve, why would the government give up such a useful tool? Why would it ever relinquish its control over the economy like that? If what you're aiming at is power to the people, can I interest you in abolishing the state? Creating money becomes a problem for the government when it spends considerably more than it brings in taxes, because that would mean there are too many dollars or whatever currency in the system, so there'll be inflation. Taxes are for canceling out the money the government has put out there. The government takes your money, puts it into a database, and deletes it. Same reason governments issue bonds. They're taking money out of circulation to keep inflation down. There are many trillions of US dollars in circulation. When your contribution to that ocean is a few $1,000, it makes no noticeable difference. If I'm still that corporation, the effect of the government giving me $1 million just means now there's another $1 million in the system, with as much inflation as that implies. Not a lot anyway, considering national government budgets are in the billions and trillions. It could give me another couple million. It could give millions to the poorest people. You wouldn't even feel it. What's more, while printing money contributes to inflation, I hesitate to place all blame for rising prices on the government when many consumer goods retailers have been posting record profits for years now. You know, until recently. But somehow blame for everything still falls on the poor. Now that we're about 3 generations deep into neoliberal indoctrination, countless people believe the state should only spend money to hurt people. They don't put it that way. It's just that every time they hear 50 cents was spent on welfare or refugees, they complain about how they're being made to pay for someone else. Meanwhile, the US military takes in $1 trillion a year, police and spies take their billions, prisons keep getting built, and all their budgets go up every year. I'd love to hear the same energy for the people who play a purely destructive role in the economy and cost hundreds of times more than welfare. Also consider, you don't get to decide how the government budget is spent, so arguing over its details is largely futile. So is that the problem? The lack of democracy? The powerlessness of the individual in a hierarchical society? Or are you just angry that poor people are allowed to keep living? But angry taxpayers are just acting the way the state wants them to. The purpose of the state, especially today, and in the past, and always, now that I think about it, is to rule people, not to help them. The state creates poor people by taking everything away from them. Then it reimburses them just enough in welfare to survive if they give all that money to the corporations that own everything. Meanwhile, comfortable people in million-dollar homes are objecting to the government building a house for someone who didn't pay $1 million for it. But there's no need to feel bad if you use state services and don't pay taxes, because your taxes don't pay for anything. Likewise, there's no reason to feel bad if you pay taxes but you hate what the state does. You're not funding it. The state doesn't have money because you paid what it said you owed. It has as much money as it wants. All you're doing by paying income tax is keeping inflation down by an infinitesimal amount. Margaret Thatcher...
Thatcher.
Yes, that Margaret Thatcher once said this: "Let us never forget this fundamental truth. The state has no source of money other than money which people earn themselves. If the state wishes to spend more, it can only do so by borrowing your savings or by taxing you more. It is no good thinking someone else will pay, that someone else is you. There is no such thing as public money. There is only taxpayers' money." And she was wrong. So wrong. Got it backwards, in fact. But I had fun putting on a wig. Governments don't take your money and then give it out. They print money, hand it out, then make you give some of it back. I've made a different video on the origin of money that you can check out if you're interested, but basically, it was never a voluntary agreement of everyone who thought it would be a good idea. It was imposed on us. By indebting everyone, governments forced them to pay some amount of money in taxes. The government makes everyone pay those taxes in a single currency, which gives it significant control over the economy. As an intended consequence, we have to work for the people that have all the money to be allowed to survive. I don't agree that you have a moral obligation to pay taxes and follow laws if you hate what the state does. I want justice, which is often completely different from the law. I used to say we should stop paying taxes because that would drain state revenue and it would go bankrupt and it wouldn't be able to spend anymore. Now I realize that doesn't make sense. They can just print more. Now I think you shouldn't pay taxes because the system has taken enough from you already. Long before you were born, people took ownership of the land, water, and other resources around you. The choice was and is to work or starve. Like most of what I say on this channel, you can see it for yourself. You know, no one got to own billions of dollars worth of stuff just by their own hard work. That wealth is a zero-sum game, and that only a few people could ever become really wealthy. Instead of having full access to those resources, because why shouldn't you, they were fenced off, and you could only use them if you paid, and you could only get paid if you worked. You don't get to be rich. Mostly only people who do the arduous work of owning stuff, like shareholders and landlords, get to be rich. But you still have to work for the rich and pay for the spending of the state that works for the rich. I just don't think you should have to. Your fair share of taxes is zero. Besides, if you don't pay tax, it'll just get paid by big corporations. Oh, wait. Corporations don't pay tax. Well, then it'll get paid by the super rich. Oh, that's right. They don't pay tax either. I guess you should make your contribution of 3 months' salary to offset the effects of not taxing the people who own everything and contribute nothing. Regardless, I don't want you to get in trouble with the government, so do whatever works for you. But when currency issuing governments say they just can't afford something, they're lying. They could always spend more. The US could easily put $1 billion into the accounts of children's hospitals and the mustard seed, cancel all student loan debt, even finally get around to paying reparations. A few decision makers choose not to, and in the US at least, always will. They work for the corporations who don't pay the taxes you're stuck with. If someone says you're morally obliged to pay taxes, tell them you'll pay taxes when the system you're paying for starts working for you, which is never. Thanks.